The photo in my hands was 20 years old. The little girl in it was missing, presumed dead, and she looked exactly like me. My name is Sarah Calloway. I'm 32 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Arlington, Virginia, just across the Potomac from D.C. I work as a data analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm near K Street. I drive a used Honda Accord. I get my groceries from the Giant on Columbia Pike, and I eat dinner alone most nights in front of Netflix. I know that sounds lonely. Maybe it is. But I've built a life that works for me. Quiet, predictable, safe. I was at Reagan National that Tuesday morning because I had a work conference in Chicago. A short trip, 3 nights at a hotel near the Magnificent Mile, a few days of meetings, and then back home to Arlington. Nothing special, just another work trip. Or at least, that's what I thought. You'd think not remembering your first 10 years of life would be terrifying. And honestly, when I was a teenager, it was. I used to lie awake in that yellow bedroom in Roanoke and try to remember something. Anything. A face, a voice, the smell of a kitchen, a song someone used to sing to me. Nothing. It was like trying to find a room in a house that had been completely sealed off. The door was there. I could feel the edges of it. But I could never get it open. My pediatrician back then said it was likely dissociative amnesia, that something traumatic had probably happened to me as a young child, and my brain had protected me from it by wiping the slate clean. Margaret used to say, "Baby, God gave you a fresh start. That's a blessing, not a curse." I tried to believe her. I went to Patrick Henry High School. I made decent grades. I ran track. I had a few friends. I got into Virginia Tech on partial scholarship and studied statistics. I got a job in D.C. right after graduation. On paper, I had a full, normal American life. But there was always this hollow space right in the center of my chest, like a room with no furniture in it, like a chapter torn out of a book. And no matter how many times I tried to fill it, with work, with routines, with keeping busy, it never went away. I'd learned to live with it, until the morning a stranger in an airport changed everything. I want to tell you a little about myself before I tell you what happened at that airport, because the context matters. It matters more than I ever realized. I grew up in foster care. I was placed with the Calloway family when I was 10 years old. Margaret and Don Calloway, a sweet older couple from Roanoke, Virginia. Don drove a Ford F-150 and coached Little League on weekends. Margaret made the best apple pie you've ever tasted in your life. They adopted me when I was 12, gave me their last name, gave me a Christmas stocking and a bedroom with yellow walls and a backyard with a tire swing. They gave me a real life. But here's the thing about growing up in foster care. There are questions you learn not to ask. Questions that don't have answers. Questions that just make the silence in the room feel heavier. Like, where did I come from? Who were my real parents? Why did no one ever come looking for me? The social workers who processed my case in 2002 told Margaret and Don that my background was unclear, that I'd been found wandering near a rest stop on I-81 in Virginia, alone, barefoot, wearing clothes 2 sizes too small. I was 10 years old, and I remembered absolutely nothing before that day. The flight to O'Hare wasn't boarding for another 40 minutes. I had a window seat confirmed, my laptop charged, and a podcast queued up. I was literally in the middle of reading a work email when I heard it. "Katie." It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was just quiet. Said the way someone says a name they haven't spoken out loud in a very long time. Careful. Almost reverent. I didn't look up. Katie wasn't my name. Someone was obviously looking for someone else. Katie. Katie Hargrove. I don't know why that made me look up. It wasn't my name. I'd never heard that name in my life. But something about the way he said it, the weight of it, made my head turn. There was a man standing about 15 feet away from me. Older guy, maybe late 50s. Silver hair, a few days of stubble, brown canvas jacket. The kind of face that looks like it's carried a lot of hard years. He was staring directly at me, and his face... I can't describe it right. It was somewhere between hope and grief and total shock, like he was seeing a ghost. I pulled out one earbud. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think you've got the wrong person." He didn't move. He just kept staring. You're not Katie?" he said. "My name is Sarah," I told him. "Sarah Calloway. I don't know who you're looking for." He blinked, took a breath, and then he said the words that started cracking something open inside me. "I'm sorry. You just look so much like someone I used to know. Someone who disappeared a long time ago." He turned to walk away, and I don't know why. I still don't know why to this day. But I said, "Wait, I don't know what made me stop him. Some instinct I couldn't name. Some pull I didn't understand." He came and sat down in the empty seat across from me. He introduced himself as Roger Hayes. He said he was from Harrisonburg, Virginia. He said he'd been driving down to D.C. to visit his sister when he'd decided to stop at the airport to grab a coffee and use the restroom before hitting traffic on 66. He said he wasn't even supposed to be at that gate. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small white envelope, the kind people keep old photos in. His hands were shaking slightly, just enough for me to notice. "I've been carrying this for years," he said. "I always said if I ever saw her again, I'd..." He stopped, cleared his throat. "I'm sorry. This is probably crazy. You're probably going to think I'm crazy. Show me," I said. He hesitated. Then he opened the envelope and slid a photograph across the little airport side table between us. It was a childhood photo. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in front of what looked like a birthday cake, grinning at the camera. She was wearing a purple dress with white lace trim. Her hair was in 2 pigtails. She had a small gap between her front teeth. I stared at that photo for a long time, because the little girl in it looked like me. Not sort of like me. Not a passing resemblance. She looked like me the way a mirror looks like you. The shape of her face, the slight upturn of her nose, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" I whispered. Roger looked at me with those tired, haunted eyes. "That's Katie Hargrove," he said. "She went missing from Cumberland, Maryland in 2004. She was 8 years old. She was never found, and everyone who loved her eventually gave up hoping." The airport noise faded around me. "She disappeared 20 years ago," he said. Everyone thought she was dead. Before I could say anything, before I could tell him again that he had the wrong person, that my name was Sarah Calloway, and I had a flight to Chicago, and this was some kind of terrible mix-up, he reached back into that envelope, and he pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. It was old. The paper had gone yellow at the edges, soft and fragile the way old newsprint gets when it's been folded and unfolded too many times over too many years. He smoothed it out carefully on the armrest between us like it was something precious. I looked at it. The headline read, "Amber Alert. Local girl, 8, missing from Cumberland. Family pleads for help." And beneath the headline, a school photo. My hand started shaking, not trembling slightly, shaking, like I'd grabbed onto a live wire, because the little girl in that school photo was the same little girl from the birthday photo. Same face, same eyes, same slight gap between the front teeth. And she looked so much like me that, for one completely disorienting second, I thought I was looking at a photo of myself. "That's from the Cumberland Times-News," Roger said quietly. "October 14th, 2004. I saved it because Katie's mother was my cousin. I watched that family fall apart searching for her. I watched her mother grieve herself into an early grave. I've been carrying that clipping in my bag for almost 15 years because I swore I'd never stop looking." I set the clipping down. I pressed my hands flat against my knees to stop them from shaking. I started. "I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not her. I'm Sarah Calloway. I grew up in Roanoke. I have adoption papers. I have a social security number. I have..." "When were you adopted?" he asked. I went quiet. "I was placed with my foster family in 2002, I said slowly. "Adopted in 2004. Something shifted in Roger's expression. 2004, he repeated. The same year Katie Hargrove disappeared. I felt the blood drain out of my face. "I don't remember anything before I was 10, I heard myself say. The words came out before I could stop them. "I've never remembered anything. The doctors said it was trauma-induced amnesia. I was found alone on U-81. Nobody ever knew where I came from." Roger closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was something in his expression I couldn't read. "There's something else you need to know," he said. And the way he said it made every hair on my arm stand up. "The Hargrove family," Roger said carefully, "was investigated after Katie disappeared. Her father, a man named Douglas Hargrove, was looked at very closely by police. There were allegations, things I can't prove, things her mother hinted at before she died." I stared at him. "What kind of allegations?" He paused. "The kind that would make a mother want to make sure her little girl was never found." The words landed in the middle of my chest like a stone dropping into still water. "You're saying..." "I'm saying," he said slowly, "that I have reason to believe Katie Hargrove wasn't kidnapped by a stranger. I'm saying I believe someone who loved her, someone who was trying to protect her, made sure she disappeared, changed her name, hid her where no one would ever look." He leaned forward slightly. "Katie didn't go missing because something terrible happened to her. Katie went missing because someone made sure she was safe." The noise of the airport seemed to disappear entirely. "You weren't missing," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You were hiding." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. My whole life, the hollow space in my chest, the sealed-off room in my memory, the 10 years I could never reach, it all seemed to compress into a single unbearable moment of pressure behind my eyes. And then... "Excuse me, sir. I need you to step away from this woman immediately. Sir, hands where I can see them. Do not reach into that bag." I spun around. 3 police officers, 2 in DC Metro uniforms, 1 in plain clothes with a badge clipped to his belt, were moving through the gate crowd toward us, people scrambling out of the way. Roger rose slowly to his feet, hands raised. "It's all right," he said quietly, calmly, like he'd been expecting this. "Roger Hayes," the plainclothes officer said. "You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." "What is happening?" I said out loud. To no one. To everyone. The uniformed officer turned to me. "Ma'am, are you all right? Did this man approach you? Did he show you anything or ask you for anything?" He showed me photos. He said, "I don't understand what's happening." "This man is a known predator," the officer said briskly. "He uses a fabricated missing person story to target women traveling alone. He gains their trust, gets them emotionally vulnerable, and then he—" The officer stopped, glanced toward Roger, now in handcuffs, being walked toward the terminal exit. "You're safe, ma'am. It was all a lie. None of it was real." I stood there in the middle of Terminal B at Reagan National Airport, surrounded by staring strangers, and I heard the officer's words. None of it was real, and I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that. But the officer had let me keep the newspaper clipping. It was still in my hand. And when I looked down at it again, at the grainy school photo of that little girl with the gap in her teeth and the eyes that looked like mine, I whispered, to no one at all. "Then why do I really look like her?" I made my flight to Chicago. I sat in seat 14A and stared out the window at the Potomac getting smaller below me, and I told myself the police officer was right. Roger Hayes was a predator, a con man. The story was fake. The photos were probably fake. Everything was fake. I told myself that for 2.5 days. I sat through 4 conference sessions on data modeling and barely heard a word. I ate room service alone in my hotel room on the Magnificent Mile and stared at the Chicago skyline and thought about a little girl in Cumberland, Maryland, who disappeared in 2004, the same year I was adopted. On the 3rd night, I gave up pretending. I pulled up every news archive I could access from my laptop. I searched the Cumberland Times-News digital archives. I searched the Allegheny County Missing Persons records. I searched the Maryland State Police cold case database. And I found her. Catherine Ann Hargrove, age 8, reported missing, October 12th, 2004. Cumberland, Maryland. Brown hair, brown eyes. Distinguishing feature, small gap between upper front teeth. The case was still officially open. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I pulled up a photo of myself from my Facebook, a candid shot my co-worker had taken at the office Christmas party last December. I put it side by side with the school photo from the news clipping. I sat there for a very long time. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person I needed to talk to. My mom, Margaret Calloway, Roanoke, Virginia. She answered on the second ring, the way she always does. "Sarah, honey, everything okay? It's late." And I just said it. No preamble, no small talk. "Mom, who was I before you found me?" The silence on the other end of that phone lasted 4 full seconds. I counted. And then Margaret said very quietly, "Baby." "I think it's time we talked." I drove down to Roanoke the Saturday after I got back from Chicago. 3 hours down I-81 from Arlington, the same highway where 10-year-old me had been found, wandering alone. I'd always found that drive peaceful. Rolling Virginia hills, exits for Woodstock and Harrisonburg, the mountains in the distance. That day it felt like driving towards something I couldn't name. Margaret had coffee and banana bread waiting. She always does. Some things about Margaret never change. But the moment I sat down across from her at that kitchen table, That same table where she'd helped me with algebra homework, where Don had carved the Thanksgiving turkey every year until he passed. I could see it in her face. She'd been carrying something for a long time. "I want to tell you that we did everything right," she started, "because we tried. Don and I tried so hard to do everything right by you." "Mom," I said gently, "just tell me." She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. "When you came to us through the foster system," she said slowly, "the social worker, a woman named Pat, I still remember her. She told us your background was being kept confidential for your protection. She said there were circumstances around how you came to be in state care that were sensitive. She said the less we knew, the safer you'd be." I stared at her. "The safer I'd be," I repeated. She nodded. "We were told your name was Sarah. We were told you had no live-in relatives to claim you. We were told to give you a stable home and a normal life and not to ask questions. And you just accepted that." Her eyes filled with tears. "We were told you were in danger, Sarah, that someone had hurt you, and that protecting your identity was part of keeping you safe. We didn't ask questions because we were scared that asking questions would put you at risk." She reached across the table and took my hand. "We loved you so much from the very first week. You were so quiet, so careful, like a little bird that had been through a storm. We wanted to protect you. We wanted you to be safe and loved and normal." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry we never told you. We didn't know your real name. I swear to God we didn't, but I think maybe someone else did."
I drove to Cumberland, Maryland on a Tuesday morning. I told my boss I needed a personal day. I had never been to Cumberland, or at least I had no conscious memory of it. It's a small city up in the western Maryland mountains, about 2.5 hours from DC. Historic old town, beautiful views of the Potomac, the kind of place that feels like time moves a little slower. I parked on Baltimore Street and sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could make myself get out. Because the thing nobody tells you about searching for your past is that there's a moment, right before you find something real, where every part of you wants to turn around and drive home, where the unknown feels safer than the truth. I made myself get out. I went to the Allegheny County Public Library and asked the archivist for everything she had on the Katie Hargrove disappearance. She looked at me for just a second longer than necessary. Then she pulled the files. I spent 4 hours in that library. I read every news article, every follow-up piece, every editorial. And what I found painted a picture that made my stomach hurt. Douglas Hargrove, Katie's father, had been investigated for domestic abuse in 2003, a year before Katie disappeared. The case was dropped when his wife, a woman named Carol Hargrove, refused to cooperate with investigators. Carol Hargrove died in 2011. The obituary listed the cause as complications from illness. But the woman at the library, when I asked, lowered her voice and said the whole town knew Carol had grieved herself to nothing after her daughter disappeared. She'd spent the last 7 years of her life searching. I sat there in that quiet library in Cumberland, and I thought about Carol Hargrove, a woman I had no memory of, and I felt something happen in my chest that I couldn't explain. A kind of grief, raw and wordless and old. Like a door creaking open on a room that had been sealed for 20 years. And I thought, what if she wasn't searching for a missing child? What if she was searching for a child she'd hidden? What if she'd made her daughter disappear to save her? and then lost her anyway. I walked out of that library into the cold mountain air and stood on the sidewalk in Cumberland, Maryland, and I cried. I cried for a woman I didn't know. Or maybe I did.
After Cumberland, I did what any American in 2024 does when they're searching for the truth about their family. I mailed in a DNA test, Ancestry DNA, $49. Spit in a tube, send it off, wait. The waiting was the worst part. 2 weeks. I went to work. I answered emails. I analyzed datasets. I drove to the Giant on Columbia Pike and bought groceries and cooked dinner and watched Netflix and pretended everything was normal. But every morning I woke up at 5 a.m. and lay in the dark and thought about a little girl in a purple dress blowing out birthday candles. The results came back on a Thursday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table when the email notification came in. I stared at it for probably 10 minutes before I opened it. When I finally clicked into my results page, I scrolled past the ethnicity breakdown. I barely registered it and went straight to the DNA matches section. There was a match, a close match. The kind of match the site labels as first cousin to second cousin. The name attached to the match was James Hargrove, Cumberland, Maryland. I sat so still that my coffee went completely cold. James Hargrove. Hargrove. I clicked on his profile. He'd written a note in the messaging section. The note was dated 3 days earlier. Like he had been waiting for me to open my results. It said, "I've been on this site for 6 years hoping to find you. If your name used to be Katie, please write back. I'm your cousin. And there are things about your family you deserve to know. We agreed to meet halfway. Frederick, Maryland, about an hour from Cumberland, about an hour from Arlington. A Bob Evans off Route 40, because neutral ground felt important. And honestly, because Bob Evans at 9 in the morning feels about as safe and American and non-threatening as any place I can think of. I was there 15 minutes early. I sat in a corner booth and drank half a cup of coffee and rehearsed what I was going to say. When James Hargrove walked through that door, I knew him instantly. Not from any memory. I still had none. But from the photo he'd sent me. Mid-40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a Carhartt jacket and work boots. The kind of face that spends a lot of time outdoors. When he saw me, he stopped walking. He stood in the aisle between the booths, and he stared at me the way Roger Hayes had stared at me in the airport. That mixture of grief and hope and disbelief. Except this time. I knew it wasn't a con. This time, I felt it too. He slid into the booth across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, voice rough, "You look just like her. You look just like your mom." And my whole chest cracked open. "Tell me everything," I said. And he did. He told me that Katie Hargrove's mother, Carol, had confided in his mother, her sister, in the months before Katie disappeared. That Douglas Hargrove had been escalating. That Carol was terrified for her daughter. He told me that Carol had arranged it herself. A woman from her church who worked with a children's advocacy network. A network that quietly helped children in danger disappear into safety, off the official grid, where an abusive parent couldn't follow. He told me that Carol had kissed her daughter goodbye in a parking lot off Interstate 81 and handed her to a stranger and watched the car drive away. And then Carol had gone home and reported her daughter missing, because that was the only way to protect her. If Katie was missing, Douglas would never find her. The network would make sure of it. Carol had saved her daughter's life. and spent the rest of her own life not knowing if it had worked. I pressed my hands flat on the table so he wouldn't see them shaking. "She never knew?" I whispered. "She never found out I was okay?" James shook his head slowly. "She died in 2011, he said, still searching, still hoping. I closed my eyes. "I want you to know something," James said. "Before she died, the last thing she told my mother was that she didn't regret it. She said, whatever happened to Katie, wherever she ended up, at least Douglas didn't get to her. At least she had a chance." I couldn't speak. "She loved you more than anything in the world," James said. "And she gave you up because she loved you that much." The Bob Evans breakfast rush hummed around us. Families with kids, retirees with their newspapers, a couple of truckers at the counter. Ordinary American morning. And I sat in a corner booth in Frederick, Maryland. And finally, for the first time in 32 years, I cried for my mother. I still drive I-81 sometimes. The same stretch of highway where a 10-year-old girl was found wandering alone. Barefoot, silent, carrying nothing but a life someone had erased to save her. I think about Carol Hargrove, driving home after she let her daughter go. What that must have felt like, the weight of that, the particular kind of bravery that looks, from the outside, like abandonment, but is actually the most selfless act of love a person can make. Giving someone you love the best chance, even when it costs you everything. I think about Margaret Calloway, who asked no questions and gave a scared little girl yellow bedroom walls and a tire swing and a home. I think about James, sitting in a Bob Evans with his hands around a coffee mug, waiting to see if the woman who walked through the door was really her. I think about how a stranger in an airport, a criminal, a con man, accidentally said the right name at the right time, and how one small moment of turning around and saying, "Wait," instead of walking away, changed everything. Here's what I know now that I didn't know a year ago. Identity is not just a name. It's not a social security number or an adoption certificate or a childhood you can or can't remember. Identity is the accumulation of everyone who ever loved you, everyone who made a sacrifice for you, everyone who chose you. Carol Hargrove chose me. Margaret Calloway chose me. Even James, sitting in that diner, he chose to find me. I was never really missing. I was just waiting, without knowing it, to be found. My name is Sarah Calloway, and somewhere, in a quiet cemetery in Cumberland, Maryland, a woman named Carol knows that her daughter is okay. I have to believe that. I choose to believe that, because some things you can't measure, and some things you just have to hold on to anyway. If Sarah's story moved you, if it reminded you that love sometimes looks like letting go, and that the people we've lost might be closer than we think, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story about never giving up hope, share this video with them today. It might mean more than you know. If that story gave you chills, wait until you hear what happened when a woman found a decades-old letter hidden inside the walls of her childhood home and discovered her whole family had been keeping a secret. Click the video on your screen right now. You are not going to want to miss it.